From fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada, this is Pod Therapy. Real people, real problems, real therapists. If you have any questions you'd like to ask or advice you'd like to give, come on over to podtherapy.net and join the conversation. It's a bank show. We didn't realize it until now that I wasn't going to be here next week, so we're throwing this together at the last minute.
Yeah.
The important thing you need to know is that we are completely unprepared. And now, broadcasting from the churn, that guy's Dr. Jim Jobin. I'm Nick Tangeman. It's time for some pod therapy.
We call this pickup therapy, right? It's just, just show up and just throw down.
Right.
That's what this is. It's cold heart street therapy, Nick.
This is the walk-in appointment
no prep
of podcasts.
It's funny because this makes it sound like we do so much prep for the other one. No, we don't. Like, there is no prep. Like, half the time we're reading those scripts for the very first time. So
yeah.
This is pretty similar
Well, that's usually
to that.
what happens. One person writes it and the other one's...
Well, you got to think about it, too. In real-life therapy, that's it. You don't get any prep.
Well, in
Nobody
real-life
emails
therapy,
you.
we can ask questions.
We can ask questions. That's true. So this one's going to be moving at a brisk pace because we got some awesome questions. We want to make sure we're getting to all of them. That way we can kind of clear the slate for episode 48 and 49. But actually, Nick, before we jump in, I just wanted to make a note. We are coming close to our 1-year anniversary. We are, as of this taping, if this is episode 47, then we are something like 5 episodes away from our 1 year, which will be the first week of January. Lots to think about. So we'll have to start talking to our patrons and discussing what does an anniversary show look like and what kinds of fun things might we do to kind of celebrate this community that we've built. But super excited. So if you're joining us for the first time, thank you for joining us. And no, this is not our first episode. It's our 47th. We've been around for a minute.
It will sound like our first.
It will still sound like the first.
I hope not. That first was terrible.
Oh my gosh. Nobody should ever go back and listen to any of that. One
still,
day.
Still better than the pilot.
Yeah, we destroyed the pilots. Yeah, the 2 pilots, actually, I might still have them on my phone. I want to think I deleted them.
Oh, you better have deleted them.
Yeah, that's going to be used against us one day. And episode 13, which only Dr. Doughn has. But He bought it. He bought it fair and square. He sold it cheap, man. Should have put a high price on that thing.
Yeah, I
get
know.
away with murder. So our first question actually comes to us. This is an international question. I always like these when we get somebody from across the world. So this one's titled, How to Find a Therapist in Prague. Hi, I found your podcast on Ice Cream Social and listened to 20 episodes in about 2 days. It's great. Also, where has my weekend gone?
Yeah, okay.
Down the toilet, my friend. You don't get that back. Listening to your podcast made me consider seeking out therapy. I've written down everything that I've wanted to figure out, and it's a pretty long list. I wanted to ask you, how should I go about seeking a therapist in my area? I'm in Prague in the Czech Republic, and I asked my doctor, and she didn't have a reference to give me, and I got a feeling she doesn't get asked that question very often, as she seemed stumped and looked at me as if I was going to go postal on her right there. And then, I think I'm going to have to change my doctor, by the way. Yeah, I think you probably should. I tried Googling around, but I'm unsure what to look for. Should I go for a woman or a man therapist? Should I look for a specialist or a generalist? How do I recognize that I have chosen wrong? Can I choose wrong? What if my and my therapist's beliefs don't match? I'm a pretty hard skeptic, and I have a therapist in my family, and she's also into all kinds of pseudo-scientific woo, at least outside of her practice, which colored my opinion of therapists heavily. I don't think that I would like to end up in the hands of someone who follows scientifically disproven practices. I'm mostly sure none of those things I want to change are clinical, but here's the start of a list that I'm working on anyway. Overeating, anhedonia, messed up reward system, lack of motivation, lack of self-confidence, inability to make and form new friendships, lack of motivation to seek other people's company, lack of motivation to seek enjoyable things in general. Sheesh, I'm a mess. Basically, I wake up, go to singing practice with a vocal coach, and then go to work. I'm a software engineer, and for the rest of the day, I'm a couch potato. I could do so much more with my spare time, improve myself in so many interesting ways. I just don't seem to want to. I tried talking to my family or my roommates about this, and they just don't have any good advice. They tell me, just don't eat that much, that kind of thing. And it doesn't really work for me. I think I'm ready for professional help. Thank you for your podcast, David Polak.
Thank you, David.
Great question, man. And we've heard this before, but it's interesting to hear it from another country.
Right. Prague. Wow, that's
Prague.
That's way over there.
Whimsy.
Yeah. Have you been to Prague?
No, I have not.
No, me neither. Someday.
I've
I
been
want to check it out.
I've been to Phoenix.
I want to
Is
check
that
it out.
Similar?
I'll repeat that joke so you hear it again. Yeah, it's not by Phoenix. First thing I want to say, David, when you said, "Geesh, I'm a mess," no, you're not.
No, you're not.
You're
No.
not a mess. You are right where you need to be,
That's right.
and you got some things you need to work on, just like everybody else. But don't be the disorder, right? Just be
Yes.
you. Be your
Yes.
identity. So, as far as finding a therapist, I always like hearing what mental health is like in other countries.
Right.
We talked to some folks during the recording of Penn Sunday School who were up in the green room,
Right.
who were from England.
England.
And they said something very similar to what Mandy from Australia had said.
Yeah.
In that in those countries that you just don't talk about therapy.
Right.
It's not something that's very open and talked about. So I wonder if that's kind of how it is in the Czech Republic as well.
Yeah, and they also talked about access, because in England they have universal health care. So at the time we were talking to those two women, my assumption was, oh, it must be relatively pretty easy. And they were saying, well, no, there's a waiting list. And so it's very infrequent that you'll be able to get in. There's like a 2-month waiting list.
Yeah.
And so it's hard all over, it sounds like.
It is. And even in the United States, I was talking to somebody the other day who was saying that it's really frustrating to want help and not be able to get in, because you have to call your insurance. You got to get a list of providers from your insurance,
So
and then you
frustrating.
call them, and they're not taking new patients. And somebody I was talking to said they had called like 6 people, 6 different therapists, and 4 of them never called them back.
Oh, man.
And so that's frustrating from my angle, because I don't want to send that message that that's what therapists are like.
And actually, before we move into the heart of the question, which is the kind of personality and qualities to find in a therapist, I'll speak to some of this because I have a private practice, and it's crazy, Nick, because I have been trying to get on insurance panels. So I'm calling the insurance panels and saying, hey, I'm available. How do I go about getting on with you guys? There's not enough therapists in Nevada. We have the fewest therapists of any state, and yet they still have the boldness to tell me, oh, we don't need you.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but
We're
there's
not
a
taking
waiting
any
list
new
around
providers.
there's people waiting in line around the building. So then I take just cash for right now. That's all I can do. Or I can bill out of network, right? And I'm thinking, man, nobody will ever come see me because of that. They're going to want to use their insurance. No, people are piling up. And it's crazy because the number one complaint they have is, I got so sick and tired of waiting for somebody pre-approved by my insurance that screw it, I'm just going to pay out of network and send them the bill. But like, that's how bizarro it is. And we're in Nevada. It's a unique state. It's a unique place. I imagine Prague is got its own little basket of issues. But however you solve the riddle of how to get access to a healthcare provider, how to get access to a therapist, we don't necessarily have any nuanced positions on that. Googling seems just as effective out there as it is here. A lot of people use things like Yelp here to find, providers in their area that have good reviews. Calling your insurance, if that's what you do in Prague, and asking who's an in-network provider could be a good thing. I don't know if that's what they do. But let's skip over that, the practical side. Let's speak to those questions about who the other human is and the importance we place on certain characteristics.
Yes, and one of the things that you had said as far as kind of that the caricature of a therapist being kind of new age into the woo and everything. And Jim had sent out, I think it was a tweet or an Instagram picture of therapists.
That was so funny.
Yes, because the caricatures in that reminded me so much of a lot of my professors. They're very much like that. And it is difficult because, yes, there are people who have experienced like pastoral counseling like Jim does. There are people who are atheists like I am, and there's people who are everywhere in between the two of us.
Right.
There's really, you just kind of have to experiment. You just have to be able to kind of, hopefully some of them you can call in advance and kind of talk to.
Yes.
But,
so here's a kind of a first read on that. I don't want anybody to be so preoccupied. You're not finding a spouse. You're not finding a soulmate. You're not shopping for a best friend, okay? So this is not Match.com. You do not need to go find somebody that has the same life view of you. I work with atheists. I work with devoted Christians. I work with Mormons. I work with Catholics. I work with white people. I work with non-white people. I work with straight people, gay people. I work with families. In the same day, Nick, I will see an 18-year-old and a 75-year-old.
Right.
Okay, and I am not 18 and I am not 75. So the reason that I think we can do that comes down to efficacy. And that's the gold standard to me. Is this person good at what they do?
Right. You don't have to agree on everything,
Right.
right? I mean, all you have to do is you have to find somebody who you can talk to,
Yes.
someone you feel comfortable with, and don't limit comfort to they share my same philosophy.
Sameness is not going to be the thing. And the way that I want you to shop for a therapist is in many ways the same way you'd shop for a mechanic or any other kind of medical professional, is you're going to say, okay, does this person have a track record? Do they seem competent? So you're looking for those external qualifications like licenses. You're looking for those reviews. You're looking for a good reputation. You're looking for their CV or their resume and kind of asking, okay, what's their background? If they do have specialities, because that's something he asked, is like, well, do specialities matter? Yeah, they can. I mean, like a lot of people that come to see me, they might come for an addiction problem, right? Even though I can treat general mental health. And I also specialize in anxiety, and partly because I've lived anxiety, right? But I don't put that out there. Usually after I get to know my patient, I'll tell them, hey, I resonate with what you're saying in a personal way because I have generalized anxiety. But that's not what they know about me coming in. Mm-hmm. So yes, I think specialities can matter. It depends on what you're going for. He gave us a list of things that he wants to work on. Based on that list, no, I don't think you need a specialist in any particular thing. If you're saying, man, I want to lose some weight, you don't necessarily need to go see an eating disorders counselor, right? Because they're there for the high-end extreme of like anorexia or something to that effect. So go for a generalist. Go for somebody that's just a general mental health counselor or psychologist or social worker. Any of that is going to be fine. Trust your instincts originally. Like if you look them up and, you know, right away you just don't see any possible overlap, you don't think that they could relate to you, I'm going to challenge some of your thinking on that, but also that's fine. Find somebody that you do feel comfortable enough with to give them a first shot, and then get started. That's the most important thing you can do. Because I've had people, Nick, that have met with me, and after 3 or 4 sessions, it's not a good fit. It's happened. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I try to tell them, if I'm not a good fit, I need you to signal that to me, because I want to get you to a helper who is a good fit. And at least by that point, I've gotten to know you, and so I can guess who the helper you need would be. And I have a Rolodex of people in my career that I know. And so I will warm hand you off to somebody that does maybe match what you're looking for.
Right.
And, you know, his fear that people are going to be woo-woo and, you know, pseudo-psychological, that can happen in all careers. You know, I see that everywhere.
And therapists can be like that in their personal life, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they bring it into their practice.
Yeah.
Right? So, I mean...
That's an area that I want him to ask about, though, because I do know some colleagues that are like, they're a little bit too holistic. You
like
and I have
healing with crystals?
Yes, crystals, Reiki. You know, you and I had a colleague that was like obsessed with Reiki, and Reiki's about like energy and like putting your hands around somebody. It's non-clinical. It's non-evidence-based. This is not science. And that doesn't mean that it can't be useful. It can't be a tool. But if that's something that bothers you, David, I want you to come right out. One of the things I'll ask somebody when I first meet them as a new patient, what works for you? What doesn't work for you? What kinds of things do you expect will be helpful? What kinds of things could I do to screw this up? And that's when you can tell me. Don't get like woo-woo with me, like stick to the facts. And that's something that I've had patients tell me. They've said, Jim, I've looked up your profile. I see that you come from a faith community. I am a hard atheist. Do not put that between us. And I'll tell them, I don't care. I do a podcast with a guy who's an insufferable atheist. We're fine.
Completely insufferable.
He literally made sacrilegious treats for today's show. He has crosses made out of pretzels and Bibles made out of Fig Newtons.
To be fair, they were leftover. They weren't for the show.
Leftover from his shit on religion party that he had. Yes. So, no, and I get along fine. It's fine. So, anyway, bring that kind of stuff up.
So let me ask you this, Jim. Get your opinion on this. I mean, I can already hear a lot of the people in Nevada say, you know what, guys, it's not that easy because it's so difficult to find a therapist. Sometimes you just have to take what you can get.
Take what you can get.
Is there harm in just doing that? I mean, do you think somebody could actually end up worse with a bad therapist?
That is so unlikely, in my opinion.
That's what I was going to say, too.
I'm not going to say never, right? Because there is such a thing as malpractice.
Right.
I'm going to say extremely rare, right? So I just want you to go get the problem looked at.
So in general, we can probably say any therapist is probably going to be better than no therapist at all. So even if you get in the door and it's not a perfect fit, you at least got in the door.
Yes.
You can talk to somebody. Maybe you're not going to go from 0 to 100, but you're going to advance a little bit.
Don't let your problems use this as an excuse to continue being in existence, because that's what they're going to do. Your problems are going to take on a personality. They're going to talk you out of this. They're going to give you anxiety, and they're going to tell you, you know what, we don't want to screw this up. You know, you got to get the right person. Listen, no therapist I've ever met is the right person. I cannot think of one patient who I would say I am God's gift to their problems. Like I was perfectly and wonderfully made to solve this problem. Like, no, I'm adapting and I'm trying to use all the books and skills that I've bumped into to construct with them a solution to their problem, right? I don't have a silver bullet. I have a lot of bullets, and like we work together to solve it. You are the most important person in that room. Yep. Not the therapist. The person that walks into that room, that is David, that's who's going to ultimately be responsible for the success. The other person's there to guide you and unlock you. You're going to be the most valuable component of that therapy.
Yep, absolutely. Get in there, give it a shot, and let us know how it turns out.
Great question, man.
Thank you for writing it.
Let us know how it turns out.
Yep. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we will answer a question about horrible bosses. You're listening to Pod Therapy.
This week's Theraproducer sponsor is Grae Whittaker. Grae Whittaker is the vice chairman of our board as of this taping because he keeps increasing his giving levels so that he mostly could just piss off the other Theraproducers. And he keeps outbidding everybody. So as of this taping, somebody is one up on him, but he is fighting to the top. So Grae, we love you. Thank you so much for your support. And thank you for your contribution to make this show possible. If you are listening to the show and you want to join the party, you can make this show possible and access that special content by going to patreon.com/therapy and signing up. Again, that's patreon.com/therapy.
We're back. You're listening to Pod Therapy. Our next question is about horrible bosses.
All right, this is a great one. Hi guys, I'm a huge fan of the show. I discovered you through ICS, and now I listen to your new episodes as soon as they come out. Keep it up. I can't get over my experience with a horrible boss. In 2016, I started working with a guy who was every cliche of a horrible boss. I'm no expert, but I think it's safe to say he had many narcissistic and even psychopathic behaviors. I could list them all here, but basically he had no ability to recognize his employees' emotions and would often push them to the point of a breakdown. During the time I worked for him, I went from being the new guy in the office to the oldest employee. 15 out of 17 people quit or were fired in the first 12 months that I worked there.
Wow.
I stayed... Wait a minute, does this guy work in the Trump White House? Oh.
Okay.
Oh my God.
I get it. This makes sense.
Jeff Sessions. Oh, God be with you, man.
I had a feeling he was a listener.
Attorney General Sessions. I stayed because, despite the issues, he really supported my career growth and basically made me his number 2 in command. However, around the 14-month mark, I just couldn't take it anymore. That's when I was fired. My boss discovered that his employees, including me, were talking about him behind his back. I'm not proud of that it happened that way, but the employees had to vent to each other to keep each other from going nuts. I still have a hard time that I became that type of office gossip, but as I said, I couldn't take it. I haven't worked for him in over a year and a half, but he continues to have free rent in my head, as you guys say. I have a great new job that I love, that pays twice as much, but every time I achieve a new goal, I feel like all I can think of is, F you, old boss. Take that. While I don't follow him on social media anymore, once in a while I get curious, and seeing that he has any kind of success makes me sick. I have weekly, sometimes more than that, nightmares about being back in that office working with him. I avoid going to events in our professional community out of fear that we'll bump into one another. What can I do to get this guy out of my head and move on with my life? Thank you so much, Anonymous.
Wow, that's a really good question.
God, that's a great one.
That's a great question.
That was fun to read.
I've had this experience before with horrible bosses.
Are we going there? We're gonna just pour this out on the table right now? Wow.
I wasn't thinking about
I thought we were past this.
But, okay.
When you were my boss, I thought you were good. It was fine. I didn't have any problems.
Yeah, that's because I was a better boss.
That's because you're a better boss, because you didn't get us both fired, Jim.
Right. Yeah, I'm glad we can laugh about that now. No, actually, I was thinking about a boss that I had when I first moved to Nevada.
Okay.
And it was incredibly frustrating. And it was it was a very toxic work environment. And it really eats at you. And the days just seem to drag on for like 14 hours at a time. You can never clock out because you're constantly getting calls at home and you're expected to answer everything, and it just emotionally drains you. And I could tell that this person's mental health was not stable, and as a result, all of us suffered, and we
Right.
were all running around. And it was a fear-based culture too, which was not healthy. It sounds like your perspective, Anonymous, is that you just can't let it go. So that's really, I think, what we need to focus on. So something is keeping this going in your head. We have to figure out what that is and be able to kind of let that go.
So it sounds a lot like trauma. I mean, in that sense, like a lot of times people mistake that they think trauma can only be when there's gunshots and you're in fear of your life. But one of the things I think that we don't appreciate enough, Nick, is this concept of professional traumatizing, right? Because our work is a part of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It is the thing that produces shelter, food, and survival, right? So we do not, that thought is not lost on us. We could talk about passion and vocation and mission and why I like what I do, but at the end of the day, I like what I do because it pays my bills. And so when that is threatened, or whenever you are made to feel scared that you're going to lose that job or be unsuccessful at that job or whatever, it is toxic, and it does scare you and frustrate you. And if you're put in situations where you're being badgered or emotionally, beat up or abused, it is traumatic because you are so powerless in that relationship. And that's the essence of all of this, isn't it? Because it's a horrible boss, not a horrible coworker, not a horrible friend, horrible boss. And that power that they have in your life over your livelihood, over your very ability to provide for yourself and your family is so essential. So to the writer, when we're talking about this, I want to see it through the concept of trauma. So whenever we're trying to deal with trauma, a lot of it comes down to processing the trauma. A lot of it has to do with sitting down, going back over the story, the narration of what happened, languaging some of the things you weren't able to language at the time, the fear that you were having, the emotions that you were having, the things that startled you, the things that went unsaid, and to kind of grind those out in a way that's useful, right? So that's one area that I do want to think about is how do we deal with trauma from that perspective? But I also kind of want to circle around, Nick, because I want to speak a little bit to the bosses out there. If you're a boss and you listen to this show, I want you to hear this story, and I want you to hold up a mirror to yourself for a second and let this story give you a moment of pause. Because I promise you, if I interview this person's boss and ask them what they think about their leadership style, they'll probably sing their own praises. I get results. Yeah, I have huge turnover. That's because I get rid of the weak links. I only keep the winners. And that's why my department gets results or whatever. They can reframe all of this. And most of them do. And that's why they keep failing upward. But everybody else avoids them like the plague, right? But they don't see it as a loss. I want you to appreciate this. If you're a boss out there, or if you might get an opportunity to lead one day, I want you to think about human leadership. I want you to think about not just how you get results at what you do, but how do you help all of those around you become the best version of them. Now, it's not entirely your responsibility, but I believe that leadership and being, a person who is a boss is more than just what the budget says or what the numbers say or the results that they get or how many gadgets they create. It also needs to be about whether or not you're helping those people become a better version of themselves. Now, having said that, bosses also get a bad rap because they're usually the ones that tell you the way it is, and they can't always care about how sad that makes you. Like, we have to get this thing done. So I can see the inherent tension that's sort of there too.
Yeah, I would agree. I think, he started there in 2016. In the first year, the majority of the people left. And that's a bad sign.
That's
right
a really
there.
bad sign.
But I think part of this too, one of the reasons maybe why this is continuing to linger is because everything was so driven by that one person and trying to please that one person that once you get, and to be in that environment for 2 years and then get out of it, it's hard for your brain to just kind of switch off and be like, okay, this person's gone now, so now I can have my own happiness.
Yes.
It almost kind of sounds like a big part of your goals or your happiness is still about trying to please this person who you dislike.
Yeah.
And I think however we figure out a way to do it, somehow we've got to get to that point where your goals become about you and your happiness becomes about you and not so much about trying to please this other person.
Yes.
Because it almost sounds kind of like a relationship that ended.
Yes. It does.
Yeah, like if you're at that spot where you ever, find yourself saying, "Oh, I wish my ex could see me now." then that should be an indicator to you that
You're not
there's
over
still
them.
something
Yep.
going on there.
You're
right?
not over them. And so this, Nick, comes back to what you and I sometimes refer to as relationship detox.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't think about our boss as somebody that we have a relationship with, but you do.
Yeah.
You do. And so whenever you break up with a boss or break up with somebody you've been with for a while, if it was emotionally abusive, if it caused fear inside of you, if it made you a lesser version of yourself, and if getting away from it is somewhat relieving, you need to go through this intentional relationship emotional detox process. And part of that is just adjusting to the new normal, right, Nick?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you and I have left jobs where we had crisis after crisis every single day. When we left the rehab that we were working at, it took me a while to stop checking my phone.
Yeah.
I didn't need to anymore. But like I was in a life where I was checking it minute to minute. Like I had 3 chargers that I made sure I had on me at all times so that I could always be in touch. And like I could just plug in my phone and walk away. And it felt so unnerving to just play with my kids and not want to check my phone or find out if something was going on or have some looming disaster. But I had to go through like a detox, an emotional detox that took a while before I was actually adjusted.
Yeah. And I don't know if there's any real techniques to it other than just, being aware of it and just kind of working through it. And it's probably going to take some training mentally to, when you have that thought, to be able to kind of reframe it and kind of remind yourself again, like that snap of a rubber band on the wrist where you're just kind of like, okay, wait, this isn't about him. This is about me. Yes. I deserve happiness for me, regardless of this other person. Because the other danger that people run into sometimes is they pin their happiness on somebody else's suffering.
Yes. That's not going to work.
Yeah, be careful not to do that because you're going to be setting yourself up for miserable.
I want to give 2 final thoughts on this from my angle. So one is, and I want everybody who's listening to this to hear me on this. If you have gone through what is essentially a traumatizing work experience, whether that's because somebody was malicious and hurtful, or whether because the job itself was insecure and you couldn't know if you were going to succeed or fail, or if it was going to work out, whether you were taking a risk or something, or if it's because you've been unemployed and you can't find something and you're discouraged about that or whatever's going on, you need to appreciate with me that this amounts to essentially a version of trauma. And it is existential because it speaks to your identity, it speaks to your livelihood, it speaks to your very survival. And so it does shake you up. Whenever the October 1 shooting happened here in Las Vegas in 2017, Nick and I were part of the therapist teams that were second responders, and we actually showed up on the Strip, and we met with people that had survived this calamity, that had been impacted by it, that had been on the scene when it happened. And what we were focused on at that time was not fixing it, not just giving them ideas and try this thinking technique. We were just hearing them. We were just digesting what scared them, being present with them. And if we survive anything that is significantly scary, we need to do that. And it's okay to do that. And I think that's part of the adjustment and detox process. And so if you've survived something scary like that, you might minimize it and say, oh, it's just work stuff. No, man, it matters. It really does. This affects you in deep ways. And so it's okay to talk to a therapist. It's okay. If you had survived anything else, you'd be looking for a support group. It'd be okay to talk about it. People would be asking you how you're doing. And you and your coworkers had done that. You'd kind of formed a support group. And I think that's extremely healthy. I can also see why your boss wasn't going to have it. But, that's essentially, that was the right track, I think, to finding healing. And final point I have on this is, if you are not just the boss, but if you are the boss of the boss, and you look at a department in your company, and you see a pattern like this, where there's high turnover, that is a signal that you might have an abusive captain, okay, who's hurting people. I have seen a lot more companies now bring in therapists external to HR, external to the company. They hire them as a contractor, and they sit and they meet with the employees, they meet with the boss, and they basically do couple and family counseling to try to bring them back to a place where they can rediscover a communication style that works, that gets results, but is not abusive. And we try to change the way people talk to each other and treat each other in the workplace. And so if you're the boss's boss, I want you to know that that is a real option. A lot of companies are doing that, finding tremendous success with it, bringing psychology and therapy into their workplace. It is healing, it is helpful, and I think it gets results for everybody. So that's also something that, if you want to bring to your corporate side or to HR, you should bring that suggestion.
Yeah, definitely. May not be a bad idea either. I don't know if you still have any contact with any of your former coworkers.
Yeah.
But if you kind of have that group that you
call them up, go get a beer with them.
Yeah, you've all experienced
talk it over.
The same thing.
Yeah. Nick and I did that. Whenever we left our rehab, we'd get together, and talk about everything that we had gone through. both of us, I think, had to stop like being in crisis mode all the time, and it took some adjusting, but I think having a support group really does make a difference. Treat it like a trauma, and you'll actually find that that's the right way to do it.
Thanks for writing in.
Thank you for writing in.
Okay, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we are going to give some advice for college undergraduates. You're listening to Pod Therapy.
So, this week's Theraproducer sponsor is Dr. Ben Doughn.
Ben.
Have a few words with Ben, Nick.
Well, it's funny because Ben and I go back a long ways, and so we're actually recording this episode a couple weeks early, so apologize about that, Ben. But Jim had sent out an email saying, "Hey, get your messages in, anything that you want to say,"
and you didn't do it.
He didn't. Yeah.
Yeah. Ben didn't send anything in.
He didn't send anything in.
So now Nick gets to say it for you.
Now, I know his motive behind doing this. Not only is he a big supporter of the show, and he listens every week, but part of his motivation is he wanted to become a Theraproducer so that when his turn comes up, he can share an embarrassing story about me. And if there's anybody who has dirt on me,
it's Ben.
It's Ben.
That's what I've been hoping for this whole time.
So he didn't get his opportunity this time.
Missed the boat.
But I'm sure next time he will be locked and loaded and ready to go.
But thank you, Ben, for being a Patreon of the show. We appreciate it, and we all bring it. Looking forward to these embarrassing tales from Nick's past. And if any of you listeners would like to join the party, make up embarrassing stories about Nick, and share them with all of us, you can go to patreon.com/therapy and sign up to do that. Again, that's patreon.com/therapy.
I don't know what he would say, because there's nothing really embarrassing about
Nothing has ever happened.
No.
Squeaky
like
clean.
What? I don't know.
Can't wait for the answer to that.
All right, we're back. You're listening to Pod Therapy. Our next listener is asking for some advice for college.
Good day to you, gentlemen. You don't have to read this one on the air, but maybe others will have a similar question, so use your own judgment. We have judged that we will read it on the air. Congrats. I've been in some kind of therapy for depression since I was 17. That makes 15 years now. I attempted suicide in 2013, and surviving that has sort of awoken a deep desire to help people struggling with the same sort of crisis. I feel that I have a lot to offer in the way of empathy, understanding, and experience as a survivor, and I want to become a professional counselor or therapist. I'm a college dropout, but I want to go back to school to pursue work in mental health and wellness. What do you recommend I focus on for my bachelor's degree? I know Jim's undergrad isn't in psychology, but does a psych undergrad help one get into a postgrad program? I want to be a boot on the ground, and I'll take any advice you care to give. Bonus question, if you're up to it, I'm writing a book about my experience as a suicide survivor. Is there anything you wish the public knew about suicide and surviving it? While I am way underqualified to write a self-help book, I think my own insight and experience could still be valuable in educating the public. With many thanks, Executive Producer Robert Brownie Jr. Mint, a.k.a. The Bouse. He's the Bouse.
All right. Well, sir.
Mr. Mint.
Sir. I was going to say sir.
Yeah.
I don't know what the title is that you want. But first of all, I'm very grateful that you survived.
Yes.
That's awesome.
That is.
I think that writing a book from that perspective, I would read that.
Oh, God, I would be handing that out like cookies, to everybody I could. That is one of the most valuable things you can do. If you're out there, one of the things that has made this community what it is, and it's so interesting that Robert's the one who writes this. Robert is one of our Theraproducers, okay? Mm-hmm. And so, like, what's interesting about our community of THERAPALs, THERAPODs, Theraproducers, all the people that have joined us, they are aggressively pro-mental health. And that's the thing that has become the community that we've created. And Robert is very much among that. And this story does not surprise me in the sense that the most powerful thing you can do as a person who's been touched by mental health is to become activated and to start helping other people realize, get rid of the stigma, get rid of the shame, get help. Let me show you the way. That is the most powerful thing. I think peer support and advocates are the biggest ingredient to the future of mental health. It's the thing we need more of.
I agree. And now one thing I will say, I'm just going to throw this out as a caveat. There are a lot of people in our line of work that get into our line of work because they were on the other end of it.
Yes.
There's sometimes some of the best therapists can be those who have dealt with mental health themselves.
Yes.
Some of the best substance abuse counselors have been in recovery.
Yes.
Now, some of the worst therapists and some of the worst substance abuse counselors have been in those situations as well.
Yeah.
The big difference between those two groups of people is how well you've dealt with your own stuff before getting into the field.
Yes.
If you get into the field thinking that this is going to be part of the solution, it won't be. I guarantee it.
No.
I know a lot of young substance abuse counselors that got into that field because they felt they weren't secure in their recovery, but if I start doing this, then this will help me.
Sober.
It will keep me sober.
Yeah, a profession in mental health is not the 12th step.
Right.
Like, that is not how you live out the 12th step. It's just not. It's a profession.
That being said, it sounds like you've made a lot of progress.
Yes.
So I think that's amazing. As far as school, what to go into in your bachelor's degree, really, I know a lot of folks with variety of different bachelor's degrees that have ended up in as a therapist.
Yeah, that's pretty diverse.
I mean, even graduate degrees can vary and get you into becoming a therapist.
Yeah, depends on the state.
Well, yeah, but I mean, like, there's the mental health counseling degree, or there's master's in social work. There's all these different things.
Yeah, it's pretty diverse.
So your BA is in psychology. So is...
No, it's not.
Oh, it's not?
No. I'll give you a second guess.
Oh, it's some
There's
church
listeners
stuff.
Right now who know, and you don't.
Yeah,
You're a bad
I know,
friend.
because I'm not a listener.
Your bachelor's degree is in social work.
No.
Your bachelor's degree is in social work? Is it psychology?
Oh.
It's in psychology? I thought it was in social work. I thought you got a bachelor's and a master's in social work.
No.
So you're a really bad social worker.
I have never seen two people happier that the other one didn't know something.
All right, that's it. We're doing this.
My day.
No, what's my middle name? What's my social? I know yours. I have it tattooed on my left hand.
Okay, so my bachelor's is in psychology.
Yes.
My master's is in social work.
Yes.
Yours is in like divinity or
Nope.
something like that. English.
Nope. There are listeners. There are Patreons right now that are yelling into the mic going, how do you not know this? My bachelor's degree is in religion with
Didn't I say that?
minor in biblical studies, I'll add, in case you were wondering.
I said divinity. I think that there's a master's in divinity.
I'm giving Nick credit on this one.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Jacob.
Church bullshit was the correct answer.
Close enough.
It was close enough.
That's why it's not a BA, it's a BS.
Yeah, that's right. It's science.
Right.
I was doing the science of religion, Nick.
Science.
Queen of the sciences, theology. So yeah, my bachelor's in religion, master's in marriage and family therapy. So quick practical advice to you, Rob. Here's the deal. The very first thing I tell anybody who's interested in pursuing this profession is you need to go ahead and look up your state regulations, okay? That is going to become your North Star, because the state has to spell out, word for word, you only get a license if you have this kind of degree from this kind of school. They'll usually even break it down to, you need exactly these classes. And if you don't have exactly these classes, we're not letting you in the door. So figure out what kind of license you want, figure out what you want to practice, work backwards from there, and figure out, okay, so what kind of master's do I have to get? Okay, fine. Shop around. What kind of master's programs have exactly that set of things that you need in order to pass the test? Then you ask, okay, what do those master's programs want? If those master's programs say, we'll accept anybody with any of this range of bachelor's degrees and this GPA, okay, now you know. Now you know exactly. You reverse engineer it step by step, and that's how you work backward to pick a bachelor's degree that will ultimately fit what you're trying to do. Now, having said that, it is the majority of master's programs are not going to have a hard and fast rule that you need to have done psychology or social work or a humanity.
Right.
No, I'm not generally going to see that. I'm generally going to see that they say get a good GPA. They might have you take the GRE test to come into master's program, but that's about it. So I would say pick a bachelor's degree, and this is something I tell people that are doing bachelor's degrees all the time. My golden rule with college: pick something you will find interesting for 4 years. Okay, don't pick something you're not good at. Don't pick something you're not passionate about, because college sucks. Like, textbooks are horrible, and even getting yourself motivated to do it is going to be hard. So pick something you're passionate about. If you like psychology, and Robert, you clearly do, that really might be the thing to pursue for you, because you'll find application to everything you're learning. You'll find it interesting.
So with my graduate class, we were a class of 10. I think we had 4 or 5 of those with a BA in psychology. Wow. And then we had one that was in English, and I can't remember the rest of them, but it varies a lot. And I would agree, there's not a heavy weight put on what your bachelor's degree is in. They look at a lot of other things for admittance into graduate school. Now, the head of the department, for my department that I was in, he actually said he prefers undergraduates with a psychology degree, and he was a social worker, right?
Yeah.
And he preferred that over the social work degree because he said from his perspective, it's just you get kind of a taste of something different. You know, you're not just continuing on the same thing that you've been working on for the last 4 years, for 2 more years. You're doing something a little bit different.
I agree. So like if somebody, so I do teach. I teach at ASU, at Arizona State University. I teach in the doctoral program. I believe it is to a student's advantage to have done lower levels of education in the same general trajectory, right? So if you did a bachelor's degree in finance and now you're pivoting over,
well, right,
and you're trying to switch gears, like you just don't have a lot of the same overlap, you know, where the skills don't apply.
Yeah, you still have to be in the same category. Right?
Yeah,
you still
so
have
it's
to
a
be in
general
the
rule.
same ballpark.
I'd encourage you to do it that way. I'd encourage a bachelor's degree in psychology or social work because you're going to start getting concepts that will play again later on, and it will add to your mastery of that subject. Now, having said that, I broke that rule, right? I learned a non-scientific discipline. I essentially studied philosophy, literary criticism, ancient works and languages, you know, for 4 years. None of that applied to psychology. However, I do feel that gave me an edge in my work because I have a really depth like knowledge of religion, not just Christianity, but Buddhism and Islam and Sikhism and all these different perspectives. It's nuanced, and that has really helped me in my cultural diversity abilities to treat people that are not like myself because I fundamentally understand what their holy scripture teaches them and why there's tension in their life because of that. And I don't dismiss it. You know, I have a lot of respect for it. So I don't know. I think that all of your lived experiences, having survived what you've survived, whatever you study, it's all going to make you a better therapist. And so the most important thing I can tell you to do is lean forward and go for it. Because, Robert, we need guys like you. We need people who've survived it. We need people that are passionate about it. We need people that, if they didn't have a credential to do this, they'd be doing it anyway.
Right.
And like, if that's who you are, go get that credential because we need you in the field.
And that's what makes a good therapist is the therapist's passion for what they do.
Right.
You can't you can't fake that.
Let me tell you something. There's a percentage of our listeners right now who, as they listen to this, the reason they listen to our show is because it's the show they would have created. And it's the show they wanted to do. But they thought, well, you know, but I don't have the credentials to do it. And if that's who you are, if you're passionate about this anyway, you're out there helping people anyway, you're the kind of person that would sit with somebody and listen to them and try to help them through challenges. If that's who you are, if that's what your heart is, this could be a great career for you. Now, if that ship has sailed and that's not going to be your profession, make it your passion. Get behind the projects that get these things done. Things like Pod Therapy, to be honest. National Alliance on Mental Illness, the Jason Foundation. The Jason Foundation especially, Robert, I think would be something you should take a look at because that really lines up with suicide prevention and helping people get the word out about what they can do about it.
Mm-hmm. Very good.
Final thought we need to say, because he did ask about it. If you, listener, are facing something right now in your life where you are feeling depressed, where you're feeling hopeless, and where the thought of death or the thought of not continuing to be alive is welcome and relieving and is something that you kind of greet right now and you accept it, that means that you're going through something that most humans have. Okay, you're not broken, you're not damaged, but you are going through something that's difficult. And you don't have to. There are ways to deal with that. You should deal with that. You deserve help. And life is worth living. There is no challenge that is so overwhelming or so damning or so disruptive or so hope-stealing that death is preferable in comparison. Death is not a way out, okay? Death is just the end of a bad story. There's a way to change the story. Death always seems like a simple solution, and it's not until we play it out and appreciate the lives we're going to destroy by doing this that we do not recognize why it's something we should step away from. So if you are going through that, if that is a thought you are having, I want you to know that there's the suicide hotline. You should absolutely Google that, and you should find out how to talk to somebody about this. You can even text them and chat with them. We've had suicide hotline engineers be on the show before and tell us about what they do. That's something you can do. If you think you might hurt yourself right now, I want you to pull out that phone. I want you to dial 911. It is okay to tell the dispatch person that this is something you're thinking about. They are not going to arrest you. They are going to help you, okay? And that is okay for you to do. That is a medical emergency if you are having those thoughts. And lastly, if you're willing to work on this, you need to call for a therapist. You need to call on your insurance card. You need to meet with a therapist and let them start doing the delicate and fragile work of repairing your life and finding a way forward. You are worth it. You deserve to be alive, and we need you here with us in humanity.
The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is 1-800-273-8255. 800-273-8255.
Thank you for writing that in, Robert. That's a great question. So we're going to skip all the apologies and stuff this week because we are recording this one early, and so we're not going to do our reviews or our Patreon shout-outs because there could have been people that signed up that we don't know about yet. And, of course, I can't apologize for things I haven't done yet, Nick. That doesn't make any sense.
Well, we can probably take a guess.
We can probably take a guess of things I might need to apologize for. But this gives us enough time to just wrap up with one last question, which is a pretty poignant one. It actually has a lot to do with what just happened in November, so worth reading about.
Okay.
Is political anxiety really a thing? Nick and Jim, I have a question for you. I recently read the attached Washington Post article, which he attached to the email. The thing that really struck me was, how is this even possible? How could 25% of college students experience clinically significant event-related distress related to an election? Is it the 24-hour news cycle? Is it the ubiquitous social media? Is it the hyperpolarization of our society? Is it just that these people don't have a sports team to root for or any other outlet? In full disclosure, I don't like Donald Trump. I didn't vote for him. But I cannot ever imagine that the results of an election or politics of any sort for that matter could cause me to cry. As a father of 2 daughters, I have now found that many movies can make my eyes water, but politics? No way. There have been many significant elections in the history of our country. However, I have never heard of people experiencing clinically significant distress from an election before reading this article. Have I just missed this? And is this nothing new? Or am I correct that this is a brand new phenomenon? Thanks. Smitty Scoop, one of our Theraproducers, another boss, writing in.
They're making us work today.
Yeah, gosh, making us earn it.
I don't know so much as if it's new. I mean, it's definitely new from the perspective that we've never really heard about it before. I don't know as if it's ever been like this obvious and so talked about.
Yeah.
In the past.
I would disagree.
You think this has been going on for a long time?
The Civil War. Yeah. So I believe that political anxiety and in huge clinically significant amount of distress based on election has shown up in our past, right? So when Abraham Lincoln was elected, there was a war over it because there was so much anxiety and distress in some cultures in the South that this was going to end their livelihoods and be something that was disastrous, right? And we've seen the same thing on repeat over and over again. Different presidents getting elected during different tumultuous times, new administrations, FDR trying to pack the court. There's been a lot of things that have happened in history that I believe, do reach the level of clinically significant amount of distress.
So, I mean, obviously, I'm sure you would agree that the time that we're living in now is much more open to discussing mental health.
That's the difference.
Talking emotions, and talking about all that. So
yeah, back in the day, I think that it was dismissed, right? It was like, oh, whatever, get over it, or do something about it. And that could mean, get active politically and take your destiny in your own hands, which is fine. Or it could mean be violent, and there was that too. If you think about the civil rights era, there was a lot of politically significant or clinically significant amount of distress in reaction to political changes that caused lynch mobs and bombings of churches and marches on capitals. And so these tensities have always existed.
So we see it differently.
We do.
So back in the 60s, we would see it acted out or played out in protests or
right.
violence or all these different things, whereas today we don't see that so much.
And that's
now
what Smitty's talking about. In the article he cites, he talks about how these college students are having such anxiety that they're underperforming in school, and they're having challenges now. And it's this question of, wow, the election season is actually having this downriver effect. So this is real, and I do want to acknowledge it. Whenever Donald Trump was elected in 2016, another therapist and I, Dr. Catherine Hertline, who's the dean of UNLV's Marriage and Family Therapy program, she and I went on national public radio to address the anxiety, the post-Trump anxiety that was happening. At my clinic at that time, not my personal practice, but in the building among the other therapists, there was a patient who actually did commit suicide after the election in fear. Now, obviously, that person's not justified, right? If you're depressed or suicidal, there's clearly something mechanically wrong. We need to deal with this. You're having a distorted reality. But that did happen. And so, we do see anxiety. We do see that these things are real. However, yes, I want to acknowledge that it's real. So to Smitty's first question is it real? Yes. It's also easier for us to acknowledge now versus in the past where we didn't talk about it in mental health terms. But now we can see that this is real. And I have a lot of friends in my life and patients that I've treated who, from one political side or the other, have taken on a lot of stress or a lot of burden in their own psychology that has affected how they play out their real life. And that's true for conservatives and liberals that I've worked with. I've seen both sides.
Right. I mean, ultimately, it really, in my opinion, I think it kind of comes down to what things mean to you, right?
Yes.
I mean, because, yeah, I can get upset about political races and losses, that I wish we didn't, the candidate didn't lose. But in my mind, the way I look at it and what it means to me is, well, this sucks. It's not going to destroy us. It may make things a little bit more difficult,
Right.
but we're going to be okay. Whereas somebody else can look at the exact same situation and, their mindset can be completely different. Like,
Yes.
oh my God, this could be the end. Like,
Well, yes.
this is such a thin line that this
Yeah.
could snap at any moment, and this could be the thing that does it.
And I think there's two things from Smitty's letter that I also want to zoom in on. One, so this level of anxiety, I'm not going to dismiss it and say it's not correct. It does exist. Should it be treated? Yeah. Generally, anxiety should be. I want people to live the best version of their lives. Also, though, Smitty said, is this something that I just don't relate to, but has always been here? Yeah, it kind of is. If you're a Hispanic American and the president's talking about how your people are rapists and dangerous and criminals, and you feel mischaracterized and now you feel like your neighbors look at you with suspicion, it changes your life quite a bit more what the next election's going to decide. Versus if, you're me, I'm just a white male living in Las Vegas. Some of President Trump's rhetoric doesn't threaten me at all. I don't care. I don't look like the kind of person that he would object to, right? But if you do, he's intimidating to you.
Not that you don't care, but it doesn't affect you.
He's not
care. Attacking you.
He doesn't cause me that existential
Right.
fear, right? Or if you're part of the LGBT community and you think, oh my gosh, this guy might take away my right to marry. Yeah, it's existential dread.
Sure.
So I do want to acknowledge that. Now, having said that, we also need to appreciate that a lot of times we have overreactions. And one of the things I think that perpetuates that is the news. So if you go to your tribe, if you go to your BuzzFeed or to your Fox News or to your MSNBC or to your, the Young Turks or wherever you go to get your stuff, you go back to your tribe and they exacerbate this stuff. They only benefit from you being high alert, high vigilance, looking to donate money, looking to support, looking to knock on doors. And so they keep you in this heightened phase of fear at all times. And because you are always in this accelerated, heightened kind of alertness position, DEFCON 5 at all times, it exacerbates the problem and it makes it a lot worse and it makes it hard for you to kind of drift back into normal life. And I think that is part of the problem.
Yeah, I can see that.
Great question though, Smith.
Yeah.
Mr. Scoop, Mr. Smitty Scoop.
Boss
man. And thanks to everybody who wrote into our show today. Again, this episode was taped in advance, so thank you to all of our Patreons. If you just became a THERAPAL, THERAPOD, or anywhere in between, we will acknowledge you in the next episode. And don't forget to check out our book club on patreon.com/therapy and our newest show, Afterthoughts, which is just an extra little treat for our sponsors and all the folks that support us, just to continue to show them some love and welcome them into our community. That's all the time that we have for this week's session. Thank you to our Landlord's Ice Cream Social Podcast, and thank you to those who contributed to our show today. We really appreciate it. Remember, Pod Therapy isn't something you should keep all to yourself. Help us reach others by sharing this episode. Copy and paste the link in the description. Don't forget that you can find us at facebook.com/podtherapy, on Twitter @PodTherapyGuys, and now on patreon.com/therapy.
Do you want to add your own advice to today's questions? Post your thoughts at podtherapy.net and join the conversation. I'm Nick Tanchman.
I'm Jim Jobin.
Thanks, and we'll see you for your appointment next week.